Up, Silas here. So we're in here for another Sunday over here. This is where I read the headlines of the papers. I'm going to go back to the original format. I'm just going to focus on the headlines of the two major papers here in Nairobi, Kenya. This is the Sunday Nation, the Sunday Standard, Sunday, June 10th, 2018. I take a walk and I talk about stuff. We're here on the balcony. There's a Hadada ibis out there. Don't know if you can see it. Where to go? They're very loud and it might make some noise. You might hear some other ones out here. There's a road right there, so cars driving by, so excuse the sound, but I like this just outside on the balcony doing these videos here. Um, you guys, if it's too loud, if it's too annoying, the sound wise, you can just let me know in the comment section. But let's just jump right into this, and as I mentioned, I'm going to focus mainly on the covers. Let's start with Team Red here, the red team, with the Sunday Standard. Speaking about teams, guess what's coming now? 4 days to kick off. Putin welcomes the world to Russia, says everyone should feel at home. All you need to know about Russia in the 2018 FIFA World Cup. Pages 2, 3, and 43. So 43 is like the back of the paper. That's the sports section, but 2 and 3, that's right here in the front. So you can see they're talking about World Cup stuff. I'm a passing fan of football. I born in Europe, then moved back to Kenya, then moved to the States. I knew football, as this, soccer, for most of my life growing up. I even remember this, one of my favorite animes growing up, one cartoon, was Olive Tom, which is Captain Tsubasa, if I'm not mistaken, had this Japanese anime character would kick balls and then they'd shaped like a lima bean, like, and like a kick would take an entire like episode to go from like the midfield to the goal, and the goalie would jump and then he'd try to catch the ball, and then his gloves, the ball would be spinning in his gloves would start like ripping and things like this. Then like you'd have to have the goalie, like I remember there was one where the goalie was like holding the ball. I was like, let's say the ball comes and hits. I can't do this with one hand. I should find some way to hold this camera. So they're holding the ball, and then the ball hits the goalie, and he starts getting pushed back. And then you had to have like more people come behind him and brace him to stop him from crossing the line. But yeah, Captain Tsubasa, Olive Tom, na 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 na. I don't know, Tom Olivier. It was something in French. They translated it to French. But yeah, that was one of my shows. But football does unite the world in different ways, soccer, and the World Cup does get to this situation. Separate video on this. I might pull this out from this video. But I was thinking with the World Cup, the way it happens, the way you have teams from different countries being what's called captained or coached by coaches from other countries. Like for example, you have like Nigeria's team will have a German coach, and that German coach might go out there and play against Germany, and he's not playing thinking, let me make Nigeria lose because I have some pride into this. And the Nigerian fans are not there thinking like, oh, the coach is going to make them lose. They're still cheering the coach, and the players themselves are still Nigerian. And then also when you go with the players, are the players Nigerian? Then you have people transferring teams. This happens in the Olympics. This happens in a lot of sports where somebody is valuable to another nation, then they get poached or they move to that nation, and then now they're part of that nation. The people who go out there and celebrate, they're not like, oh, that. Let's say it was a Nigerian player. I think some Nigerian players of Nigerian descent, the Boatengs, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's two of them. The Boatengs, they play for Germany's team, the German national team, and they think have Nigerian ancestry or recent Nigerian ancestry. They were actually born in Nigeria. If not born in Nigeria, their parents definitely were born in Nigeria. But they are cheered for. When Germany won the World Cup, the Boatengs got to raise that as World Cup champions. And you see this kind of union thing, and this does help the world come together in a way. And yes, it's a game, but it does unite people in an odd way. Here in Kenya, Kenya hasn't had a team in football, soccer, actually contending for the World Cup ever. And the sport is still major here. It still gets a lot of attention here in Kenya. There's a lot of football and soccer fans here that get very, very excited for the World Cup. But going back to the whole coaching thing, what if countries were done that way? What if you had a situation where, yeah, okay, you can vote in a president or a prime minister or even the kings and queens and things like that. But then you have different sections. You have different ministries, like the ministry, like here right now, revealed fresh shilling $6 billion scam in the Ministry of Energy. You have sections like that, privatize these things to the point where it's a what's it called? What's that? Parastatal, where it's not necessarily completely organized by the state, where it has some activities with the state, because state abolition is something that I think people who are anarcho-capitalists like me might think, yeah, that'd be good, libertarians, people like that. But to be realistic, we're not going to get there overnight. What are the steps you can take to go away from things like this? But just like football, this is something that countries, people seem to care. There's a lot of people who I'd say would care more about their national football team than even like their national government. So you get to the point where they're still okay with their national government football team being ran by somebody from another country, as long as that person is qualified and getting good results. And in that kind of situation, it's also easier to just like fire that person, like, hey, this person's not doing a good job, out, out, out. So you have a situation where why you have that, a ministry of energy like it is like that. Then you have the ministers of parliament who are in charge of these different ministries and things like that. You have that open to anyone in the world. You just have it like a job, like a CEO thing, where you're like, oh, if you want to apply for this job and you think you have a system that can work here in Kenya to run the energy grid better than somewhere else, please put in your CV, please put in your application, and then you can even tie in some kind of voting where like enough, you have to convince enough of the population, maybe like 10% of the population, that you actually have their interests in mind, and then you get to the point where it's like, okay, we're picking through this, but you have it open and anyone from any country can come in. This whole idea of just having people from one country doing the things, it's not working as well as I think it can be. And you see the evidence of it working in something like the World Cup. So I think that's kind of cool. Also, Putin welcoming the world to Russia. We don't have that whole collusion thing here in Kenya, like you have that narrative going in the United States of America, even though I think that's being tampered down because they're not really finding anything. But yeah, is it collusion now? Now if you're planning with things with Russia to do this. But anyway, there you go. President Putin getting his World Cup. That's the World Cup right there. So that's starting. There's going to be more on that in the other paper. But let's jump to this main thing here. Revealed fresh shilling $6 billion scam. And if you want to know the conversion rates, most people are listening to this are probably in the United States of America, checking the demographics of my YouTube page. 100, in general, 100 shillings is about $1. So you guys can do the math right there. Quick maths. Do the maths. So ripoff. Yet another scandal in the key government agency under the Ministry of Energy has seen taxpayers lose billions of shillings through fictitious claims, price escalations, and payments for work not done. So this is just states work this way. Governments tied to states work this way. There's a level of impunity, there's a level of corruption that exists everywhere. It's in the United States of America, it's in Kenya, it's in France, it's in Mozambique, it's in Guam. No, Guam is part of, the Guam has a government, but that's part of the United States of America. It's a protectorate or something. But yeah, it's everywhere. It's been there historically. It's going to continue because of the nature of the state. And my suggestion was just having people from outside and tying that in with a more transparency, with press actually being able to actually go out there and find these things and reveal them is a positive thing. I just recently heard something here because when you have this kind of situation, there's a lot of tribalism on complete tribal lines. Now here is Fernandez Baraza, the managing director of Kenya Electricity Commission. The Kenya Electricity Transmission Company, KETC. Now, with Fernandez Baraza, I don't know. You can see from Fernandez, there seems to be more of a European influence in his name because Fernandez, yes, it's a Spanish name, but hey, Spain is in Europe, people. I talked about this previously. Somebody was talking about one of those SJW kind of triggered or constantly ever offended people was talking about how it's unfortunate that white people in the United States of America are taking Spanish for school, taking brown people's languages, or they should concentrate on European languages. Well, Fernandez is a name that is coming from Europe because of Spain, Spanish, Spain, Europe. Hey, it's Fernandez though. Could that be Portuguese? No, I don't think so. I think Fernandez is or is it Fernando, which is, I don't know. It could be Fernandez, could be Portuguese actually, but that's in Europe anyway. So Baraza. Now I don't know with Baraza. With some of these, if I was more familiar with the Kenyan tribes, I might be able to look at his face and tell you what tribe he's from. But now again, they could be intermixing tribes. But what I was getting at was there was someone on the news talking about how in these ministries, you have somebody who comes in, let's say it's the Kikuyu tribe, they'll be the the minister of parliament for this ministry. Then they'll start hiring Kikuyus into the entire into the entire body of the ministry. There's the permanent secretary, the other officials, going down to the secretaries or regular people, drivers, things like that. They'll have that kind of situation. Then when it gets to a situation where someone's like, oh, we found somebody's corrupt, it might be him, might be the top person, and then they'll say, oh, now that means everybody is corrupt from bottom to top because everybody in that tribe is corrupt. So we need to get everybody in that tribe. So they're getting this targeted thing. And this one lady was on TV and she was just talking about how we need to stop this nonsense of tribalism. We need to get to the point where just because one person has been found in the ministry that is of a certain tribe doesn't mean everybody in that tribe is corrupt. So it doesn't mean you have to remove everybody. And then that whole thing of saying, oh, this person's a Luo like me, so I know he's done something wrong, but we have to defend him, we have to stick by him because he's a Luo. No, that person ate money. That person ate, say, huyu mtu alikula mwenyewe, akukula na wewe. They're saying that person did not eat with you. He ate by himself. So that person ate that money by themselves. They should also take that punishment by themselves. There's nothing really helping you to say, oh, he's my tribesman, fellow tribesman. I'm going to stick with him or stick with her because there's also females doing this thing too. But so this thing, another scandal because there was a scandal going on, still going on, the court case is still going on with a national youth service. That was also, I think, in billions of shillings. And so it's just scandal after scandal. But one good thing about this is I am confident that these scandals have been existing. This not the scandals. The scandal is when it's actually caught. This kind of corruption has been existing since the beginning of Kenya's government. What's happening different now is we're constantly having scandals occur because it's actually being revealed, which is a positive thing, I think, in actually stopping these things. So here we have some figures of it. So Ketraco, that's how it is. It's not Ketc. It's Ketraco. So Ketraco, shilling 3.8 billion idling fees. So I'm guessing that's just money kind of sitting there and not doing much. Shilling 72 million inflated land compensation payment to software company. Shilling 81 millions price escalation beyond the limit set in law. Shilling 944 million suspicious and inflated repairs of cables. Shilling 247.4 million interest on delayed payment. Shilling 35.6 million unclear payment to project affected persons in Kajiado. I think that's just people saying like, oh yeah, this person is supposed to be doing XYZ on this kind of building in this location. There's no building, there's no person, there's no paper trail, but the payments have gone out. So total claim per month, 108,402,718 shillings. It's a lot of money, and I hope that gets rectified. But even if it gets rectified, how do you get these monies back? But hey, I mean, even if the money's gone, but as long as the money stops, if you have a leak and you find that your land where you are is like soaked with water, and then it's not a bad thing to say, okay, so there's water there. We can't get that water back out of the land, but you still close off the leak, and you stop more water going in. I think that's still a positive thing, and that's unfortunate, or that's where we are in a lot of these situations. So here, more Cuban doctors jet in. So I had talked about this, I think, previously in one of these, where they're talking about Cuban doctors actually coming into Kenya to staff different hospitals and things like that. So the arrival of Latin American doctors triggers a moment of reflection over Kenya's broken healthcare system, as the nation is forced to look outwards for solutions to internal problems. So now this is another thing where it's like, okay, in Cuba, these people are all leaving Cuba because, yes, they may be educated, they may actually be capable of this, but the quality of life in Cuba is somewhat lower than it is in Kenya in general. And these people have decided, at least for these people, they've decided, let's come to Kenya and find work here. So that's an interesting thing to see because I do know, and I think a lot of you out there know, that Cuba, with its communist tendencies and communist country, has a lot of very negative results in that because communism, that's what happens with collectivism and things like that. Eventually, you'd run out of people's money. So these people can come here and get paid in a more capitalist type of society, type of environment. Yes, there is a corruption, but they can make their money, they can do their things in a different way. And then this whole thing, you have access to healthcare, and then there's actually health care. You can have access to things. You can have access to water, for example, but if that water is polluted, doesn't mean that water is going to do you any good if you actually drink it. So this kind of situation, I think, in Cuba, yes, there's universal healthcare, but what's the quality of healthcare? How are the doctors treated? How much of the resources? Even if a doctor is very capable, is there an MRI machine? Is there even a simple thing like bandages? Is there a simple antiseptic? Are there simple drugs to have to heal you if you're hurt? Even if the doctor can actually diagnose what's wrong with you, that's a question to ask now. Just having access to going to a hospital and having somebody see you, does that necessarily mean you have a higher chance of being healthy than somewhere like in the United States of America with its own issues with its healthcare system? Okay, so in the eye of the evolving storm, Sonko woes pile. Nairobi Governor Mike Sonko stares into the eye of impeachment days after the Kenya Power turns off lights at his City Hall seat of power. So City Hall, of course, is where the governor sits. Mike Sonko has been having some issues. He's been trying to get Miguna, who I mentioned in a previous video, had some altercation in the airport with trying to be arrested at the airport, not having his passport taken, then being stuck in the Dubai airport because he has a Canadian and Kenyan citizenship, and he was embroiled in the whole post-election kind of battle between Raila Odinga, the main opposition leader, and the president Uhuru Kenyatta. Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta months ago came together and took a handshake, buried the hatchet, and now there's a fallout on both sides of those people with what's happening with who's setting different places. So people were trying to see that, with Mike Sonko, he was trying to offer the deputy governorship to Miguna because Miguna is not really he's kind of a politician non grata right now in Kenya. He's not really liked, but then if they sack him, if he gets impeached, and then Miguna as a deputy governor, then he'll become the governor. So some people are thinking Sonko is trying to put Miguna in there so they won't impeach him because it'd be worse. This kind of thing where people I've heard people on the political left in the United States of America say, yeah, I know Donald Trump is horrible, but then if we impeach him, it's gonna be Mike Pence, and Mike Pence is a lot worse. And is he? I don't know much about Pence. He doesn't seem that harmful. I know they have that electrocution for homosexuality kind of meme thing, but I don't know. Anyway, so next, health education and mentorship in Marsabit. Marsabit's First Lady launches mentorship program in a move to empower the girl child in a hugely patriarchal society. So this continues. I'm not even going to touch on this whole patriarchy thing, whatnot, but in Kenya, this doesn't carry as much as it does in other places. Now, I'm not going to say that females are treated pretty much this sort of would say this. If you look at the way females in general are treated in Kenya, it's just as low, worse as it is in the West as men are treated. In fact, I think men in general are treated even with less care and concern here. Simple thing is think about how female genital mutilation is treated in general by Kenyan society versus how prevalent male genital mutilation is of children in entire Kenyan society. One of them is still celebrated by many, many cultures in public, done by politicians and things like that. Other one is celebrated only by very few fringe cultures that are looked down upon for doing that with a female genital mutilation. So, have the focus saying she's the first lady, so she's focusing on the female issues, but you'll hardly ever see something in this so-called patriarchal society. You'll hardly ever see something that's, hey, we're focusing on getting the boy child, empowering the boy child, but whatever. Anyway, Sunday. I will never forget you, little Jenny, a story of a troubled teen and mother's effort to right her world and help others through her experience. So I think there is an increase in Kenya, in developing nations, on just mental health. And I just recently did a video on suicide, and I talked about how there's that whole meme where it's like, in United States of America, black people, non-white people, parents seem to think depression and things like that is more of a white issue versus an actual issue. But I am happy to say that I see it being treated as a lot more serious of an issue here in Kenya. Okay, so let's move on to the Sunday Nation. Now, the Sunday Nation right here, as I mentioned, this is Ruto. This is William Ruto, who's the deputy president, or the DP, and he was the Deputy President under Uhuru Kenyatta still is, but as I mentioned, that's Raila Odinga right there. Now Raila Odinga is had that handshake with Uhuru Kenyatta, and now he's starting to get a lot more energy and a lot more power, getting his poise back in, and that's challenging Ruto's power and position. Now, the people who are supporting Ruto, because yes, there was an alliance. Ruto is, as I mentioned, tribalism is still a big thing here. Ruto, he is a Kalenjin, from the Kalenjin tribe. Uhuru Kenyatta is from the Kikuyu tribe. So even though they formed an alliance to have that position, this is both their second terms, he was kind of thinking after Uhuru goes out, he's going to go in and be president. And now he had his own alliance of people, mostly Kalenjin politicians, were behind him. And also Uhuru Kenyatta, mostly Kikuyu politicians, are behind Uhuru Kenyatta. Now you have that kind of situation where there's still a uneasy alliance, and now that he's kind of had the handshake with Raila Odinga, now there's some splintering in that alliance and things like that. So you can see here the Jubilee Trust. President's anti-corruption push shakes coalition. The president of Kenya, Uhuru Kenyatta, is actually pushing this anti-corruption thing, and that's why you're seeing some of these things coming out. National Youth Service, this Ministry of Energy. Now, the thing is, since they've been in power for, this is the second term, if they're going to actually start finding corruption in situations, it's going to be the more recent corruption over the corruption in the past. And the more recent corruption is going to be people that they put in over their last 5 years and this current 5-year term. So if it's being affected with the people who are in power, because as I mentioned before, if you lose as an opposition, you're normally frozen out of most of the politics. It's not like, like how Democrats and Republicans in the United States of America can still have some kind of influence. You still have people on committees and things like that. It's normally a situation where the winner takes most, if not all. So you're kind of frozen out. So if they're finding people that have been engaging in corruption over the last couple of years, then it's going to be mostly people who were supporters of the current regime. Current presidents, current principles. So they're actually being caught up in some of this. So Ruto allies cry foul in Uhuru war on graft. Supporters of the deputy president allege some unnamed people were steering the corruption fight in a certain direction and vow to hit back if their man was pushed into a corner. So people are starting to say, look, Uhuru yeye anafanya kazi na Raila, wako pamoja. So they're saying, okay, Uhuru is together now with Raila, and they're working together to push Ruto out, to lessen his power, and they're thinking, hey, it might come here. And now this kind of situation where it's like, hey, if you have done nothing wrong, what do you have to hide? But this is kind of situation where they can find some improprieties everywhere. Even if you're not directly the one doing it, if you've hired certain people through, and this is the thing, this is a problem when you hire people through nepotism, you hire people through these things, people come in with a level of impunity and they say, okay, I did not get my job over my actual qualifications, so why should I hold myself to any standards of actual work? So they'll understand that they came in on these dicey situation, and they could probably think, I can continue my dicey situations because this person won't fire me. They've already shown that they don't really care about results that much, and it creates a house of cards, a house built on sand. You build it on an uneasy foundation and it's going to crumble. So I'm not feeling bad for these people. I wish they get caught if they have things to get caught. I imagine if some of them get caught, they'll start ratting on other people, and this information will come out. Like I said, the waters have gone in there, they're seeping into the land, ruining the land or whatever that way, but we need to find a way to staunch that water, to stop that. However it stops, I think is more positive than it continuing. Okay, so let's go with here. Poisonous sugar now finds its way into shelves. Now, sugar is a big thing that comes from Western Kenya, which is the region where my parents are from, the Luya tribe become part of. But that's where most of the sugar in the country comes from. And now there's issues with it. Police investigations are narrowing down the sugar barons who may have exposed millions of unsuspecting customers to poisonous sugar on sale in several parts of the country, disguised as local brands. Now that's a horrible thing. Say Brazilian raw sugar. Is this coming from Brazil? So the barons run a complex syndicate said to involve powerful individuals peddling the commodity, which experts say is unfit for human consumption. A contingent of top state officials led by Deputy Head of Public Service Wanyama Musiambo, Inspector General of Police Joseph Boynet, and DCI George Kinoti led a Monday night raid in Eastleigh, Nairobi, where part of the consignment was found. Now, Eastleigh, Nairobi, as I've mentioned in very early videos on This is Nairobi, had a drive-through there. You can check that out. That's a This Is series where I go in and I just kind of give observations of places that I'm in. So that's kind of like the Sunday over here, but it's more like actually in person, going out and seeing places. But I drove through Eastleigh neighborhood, and Eastleigh is like, it's called Little Mogadishu. A lot of the Somalians, I'd say probably 75% of the people who have recent Somali ancestry or still actual Somali um, nationals who live in Nairobi area live in this Eastleigh area. And there have been questions of funding going to Al Shabaab and other kind of situations, and just some dicey stuff in there. And apparently, they're now involved with this sugar thing. Now, origin from Brazil. Yeah, this is coming from Brazil, and then it's being it's being smuggled in, I guess, and now put out into the society. Gladly, I am doing a ketogenic diet, so I'm not really taking any of the sugar. And now the local sugars, which brands is it? Now, there's top brands who probably have a higher standard of purity, of checks and balances to make sure it's not poisonous. But how poisonous? I mean, sugar itself is bad enough for you, but now adding actual added poisons to it, that's an extra situation. That's unfortunate. So let's go with here. First Lady's name used in online cash scam. This is Uhuru Kenyatta's wife, and they say detectives in Kilifi are holding two Nigerian nationals who have been using fake Facebook accounts of prominent Kenyans, among them Mrs. Margaret Kenyatta. So that's crazy. I mean, the Nigerian princes and things like that, they're still also scamming people here. And I have this kind of idea, we're talking about with Russia here, with Putin. I kind of get a feeling like from that whole old world kind of 80s, 90s, or the kind of media I grew up with in the United States of America, where the Russians were these nefarious, untrustworthy people. I feel like Nigeria is the Russia of sub-Saharan Africa. It has that same kind of general mistrust. It's like, yeah, we still got to deal with them. They're a massive country. They have these differences. We still have this mistrust, and they also have the same thing in Russia. How is like there's like the Russian part, or the closer to the western of closer to the western part of of the world. But then they have like the Siberia part, which is the part where it's closer to Asia, and a whole different kind of people there. There's also a lot of Muslim population there. Then you come to Nigeria. Nigeria has the part that's closer to I think the sub-Saharan African. It's more Christian and things like that. It's I think more lush, more green. Then they have the desert parts, which is more like part to the closer to the Sahara, closer to the Muslim world. That's also Muslim. That's like a country divided into these two kind of different societies and cultures and peoples and things like that. So yeah, there's some correlation to the two, but yeah. So that's something, some scam being found out, and again, see the scams are being exposed. That's a positive thing. Now right here, Raila scores early victory in South Sudan talks. ODM leader and ex-South Sudan Vice President Machar both upbeat on efforts to bring about peace in Africa's youngest nation that has not known joy since its birth 7 years ago. Unfortunately, that's what's happened in South Sudan. They broke away from Sudan, which the Sudan part is mostly Muslim, and now South Sudan is mostly there's this guy Mastermind had a video about the peoples in South Sudan. I forget what they're called, but they some of the tallest, thinnest, and darkest people in the world. They're like almost blue skin wise. It's pretty great. Like they're literally like that. See my skin? It's like this brown black thing. I'm brown. They're like this. Pretty much that's the color of their skin. Pretty crazy. Masaman, I'd heard some videos of him some time back, and he got that video up, and I saw him post that video, and then in a few weeks it was up in millions. And he's got a great channel where he just talks about the different biological makeup of people, cultural makeup of people from different regions. And if you're interested in that stuff, definitely check out his channel. Great channel to check out. Well, yeah, so this is Raila, and Raila is an older statesman. He's in his 70s. He's been involved in politics in the region, in Kenya for a while. So he's had relations with some of the Sudanese principals, and he's doing a supposed good job actually trying to tape down the actual military problems that are going on there. So that's a positive thing. And even having that, that's going to put him in a higher standing in the area. Now, what is Ruto doing while Raila is doing this? Is Raila getting into himself where he's just going to have enough of a public standing in the region with the people of Kenya to be able to just become the president after Uhuru Kenyatta? We don't know. So, plane crash dims promising lives. Deep in anguish, relatives of the 10 victims recount fond memories of loved ones. So unfortunate plane crash here. I don't know where this is. It looks like some hilly area. This could just be a small mountain. This could be Mount Kenya. I don't know, but that's an unfortunate situation. Still, if you haven't flown, I suggest getting in a plane. I think just getting in a plane and looking at the Earth from that height does change one's mind, change one's perception. Even if it's just a one-time thing, a short 1 hour flight somewhere, find a chance to actually take it and do it. Flying is still a lot more safe than driving. Yet when a plane crashes, it's normally a lot more people. It's normally a lot. It's a lot more newsworthy. So it may seem like it's a lot more dangerous, but it's a very safe way of travel right now. So right here, we're going to go with World Cup craze catches on. Football fanatics and their long-suffering wives speak out on how they plan to survive the bonanza. Now, here are the long-suffering wives. I guess they're talking about guys who go. Like I said, football is big here. They're talking about people who go out. They go to the bars. They're watching the games. They're following the things. But they never say something like, what's it called? Fashion fanatics or hairstyle fanatics and their long-suffering husbands speak out of how they're going to survive, I don't know, Fashion Week or something. I guess people don't go out and watch Fashion Week, but the amount of time spent watching football on weekends and things like that, how much more time is also spent on just general going to salons and going shopping and doing fashionable things that females are more interested in than men? I don't think there's really that big of a thing, but you see they're saying long suffering in quotation marks, scare quotes, that could just be a joke or whatnot. But yeah, this is part of that whole patriarchal society thing. That's what we're going to end on, this patriarchal society. Is this kind of a situation where no, men and women are different, we have different things that they like. And yeah, I think just the wording of certain things in certain ways. Maybe I'm making too big of a deal out of it. What do you guys think? But yeah, so that was Sunday over here for Sunday, June 10th, as I said. If there's an article in this that you guys want me to go further into, I keep asking if you guys want that. I might go into that if you suggest in the comment section. It still hasn't happened yet. If I read through this during the week or today or whatnot and I find something else that I want to go more in depth in, I may. But for now, that's it for today. Thanks for watching. Like, share, and subscribe. Links below to the merchandise store. And till next time, goodbye.